Hi, I'm Sayojita. Today I've made this spice mix for you. Xacuti gravy spice mix. Xacuti is a spicy gravy from Goa made with a variety of ingredients like chicken or mutton, eggs, or vegetables of your choice. The gravy is made by roasting onions, coconut, fresh or desiccated, whole spices, and seasonings. The roasting process, however, can be cumbersome and time-consuming depending on the quantity of Xacuti you have to make. This Xacuti spice mix will eliminate the roasting process altogether. With it in your refrigerator, you will be able to make Xacuti of any kind whenever you feel like, rather efficiently and, most importantly, without compromising on the taste. I must admit that the process of making this Xacuti gravy spice mix can be quite cumbersome too. Especially since if you're making a spice mix, you would want to make some that would last, so you can make Xacuti with it at least 3 to 4 times, which means it has to stay in the refrigerator for weeks or months without turning moldy or rancid. Therefore, the one requirement of this spice mix is that it be dry without any moisture. That can be quite challenging because we are using wet ingredients like onions and garlic. We are not using fresh coconut to make this, only desiccated coconut. That helps that roasting process. But removing all the moisture from onions, and you do need a lot of them, can be quite cumbersome. But not to worry, I have a few tricks up my sleeve, and I have simplified and sped up the process of making this spice mix for you, so that you can enjoy Xacuti afterwards for weeks. As a companion to this video, I have released the chicken Xacuti video, in which I have used the spice mix to make chicken Xacuti. Earlier, I have also released a mixed vegetable Xacuti, which is made from first principles. That is, without using the spice mix. I think that will be useful too for you to watch, so that you understand the whole Xacuti making process. First, let's take a look at the ingredients, and then we can get into the process itself. The dry spices. Kashmiri red chilies. These are mine. If you want, you can use a lesser quantity of regular hot chilies. Black peppercorns, cumin seeds or jeera, methi or fenugreek seeds, cloves, shahjeera or caraway seeds, knof or fennel seeds, khaskhas or poppy seeds, coriander seeds, cinnamon, cardamom and mace. The list is long, but the process of roasting is quite short. And then the remaining ingredients: onion, desiccated coconut, coconut oil or any other, garlic and tamarind. When I make my Xacuti spice mix, I usually set aside an hour or two to be in the kitchen, and I just make it from start to finish, at least the roasting part of it. Sometimes I will do the grinding another day, but the roasting of the spices, I just like to do it in one go. And while I'm doing that, I can be doing small tasks in the kitchen. However, I do understand that many of you may not be able to spare a couple of hours to make a spice mix like this. This process easily lends itself to being spread across a number of days. The roasting process itself can be broken into 3 stages: roasting the onions and garlic, roasting the whole spices, and then roasting the coconut, and grind it all on another day. We'll start by roasting the onions first. They must be roasted until brown and soft, that is, fully cooked. If your onions are not fully cooked, your spice mix is likely to be bitter, and there will be some residual moisture in there which will cause it to spoil quite soon. Roasting the onions can take a little bit of time, but as promised, I have a couple of shortcuts for you. First is for chopping the onions. Firstly, you can always use a food processor or a chopper, but if you, like me, like to chop your onions by hand, do remember that we are going to be grinding everything into a powder later on. And so you don't need to chop the onions too fine, and they don't need to be all even and nice looking. However, if they are too coarse, then the roasting process will take a long time. So you have to do that little trade-off. Just chop the onions as fast as you can, as fine as you can. That's what I would say for that one. The second shortcut is a technique I have borrowed from the barista making process. Barista are crispy fried onions. And in the traditional process for making barista, the onions are first partially dried out in the sun for a couple of days. I'm not going to dry out my onions in the sun at all. But I am going to dry them out using the same technique I use to make my barista, and I'm going to link that video right here. And I'm going to dry out the onions in the microwave. Not fully, only just to remove a good bit of the moisture. And then we will roast them and get that nice charred look. I have a lot of onions, so I'm going to need 2 batches to produce them. About 7 minutes on high for each batch. You can collect and measure out all the other ingredients while the onion is drying out. This is how they look after 7 minutes in the microwave. Not completely dry, but much drier than before. 4.5 cups have reduced to about 2.5 cups. And that is going to save us quite a bit of time and effort. The same thing with the garlic. If your cloves are big, you can chop them coarsely or crush them. In this case, I'm adding some oil because these do not have too much moisture and they also take a long time to cook through. Here it is. About 5 minutes on 60% power. They have reduced a bit, but I'm not sure you can tell from the video. And they're quite dry. Now we're ready to roast these. It's going to take a lot less time than roasting raw onions, and of course these are guaranteed to be dry, so your spice mix will keep for a long time. The broken record is on again. This iron or carbon steel kadai will help roast everything well and also give the finished mix a dark color. Let it heat up nicely first and then add the oil. Not too much because we want the onions to be roasted, not fried. And if your oil is liquid at room temperature, you will need more than I'm using. Grease it up the sides as well. Oh, now that the oil has melted, I can see that there is too much of it for roasting the onions, and I'm going to remove almost half of it. I will use it for roasting other ingredients. Throw in the partially dehydrated onions. In general, the flame has to be medium-high throughout. Spread out the onions over the kadai as much as possible to maximize the surface area in contact. The process of microwaving has also partially cooked the onions, but there's still a bit of crunch in it, and that must disappear. For the most part, we can leave them undisturbed. They need to char a bit. Just keep an eye on them from time to time. It's been 3 minutes and it started browning. If you do think it is burning before it gets soft, then you can reduce the flame a bit, as I have done. Toss it on and off and then leave it undisturbed again. Three minutes later, I'm going to throw in the partially dehydrated garlic. It also has to cook and roast with the onions. And whatever little bit of oil was there, that's gone in the onions. That's fine. Let's check out the doneness of the onions while we are at it. They're still a bit crunchy, but getting there. Time to increase the heat again. I'm going to cover the kadai, still on medium-high heat. This will have what I call the oven effect. That means it will cook and brown at the same time. It's been about 5 minutes since we covered it. I've removed the lid once and stirred it just to make sure it wasn't burning. Let's check to see if they're soft. And they're done. Onions and the garlic as well. Let's take a closer look. The aroma of roasted onion and garlic should be all over your kitchen by now. And we can take it out. It took us 12 minutes to roast these. It would have taken a lot more if the onions were raw. Next, the whole spices. Add the spices one by one. Coriander seeds, cinnamon, cardamom, mace or javitri, cloves, So fennel seeds, cumin seeds, methi, shah jeera, black peppercorns. Toss and roast lightly until you get the aroma of the spices. It doesn't take very long. And last of all, you can add the poppy seeds. And then just turn off the flame. We don't want to roast them. Take everything out in another bowl and allow it to cool. That is also important, that all the ingredients have cooled before we grind them. Otherwise, you will get some moisture in the mix if it's warm. Okay, 2 more ingredients left. The red chilies. Lightly roast them in a little more oil. We don't need a lot. I've used mild chilies because I prefer making my masala mild and then adding more chili when I make the dish, because that way I can adjust the spiciness depending on what I'm making and for whom. For instance, if I'm making vegetable Xacuti, I like to keep it a little less spicy than, say, a meat-based Xacuti. And next, the desiccated coconut. If you recall, in the traditional Xacuti, you can use fresh coconut and roast it. But in this case, that is an absolute no-no because it is very hard to remove all the moisture from fresh coconut. So, desiccated coconut it is. We don't need to add any oil for this because it has its own oil. We just need it to brown nicely. It's already devoid of moisture. So mainly for the color and the roasted flavor. This will also take a little time because there is a lot of it. It's been about 2 minutes. I have increased the flame now. Now this is another trade-off you can make. If you keep the flame low, it will take longer to roast the coconut, but you can be doing some other task in the kitchen simultaneously. If you keep the flame high, as I have, then it will roast sooner, but you have to stand there and monitor it because we don't want it to char. We just want it to brown. Okay, this is good. I'm going to turn off the gas now. The last bit of the roasting will happen in the residual heat of the kadai. Just mix everything together. The whole roasting process has taken about 25 minutes. 11 for the onion, 11 or 12 for the onion, not including the time in the microwave, that is separate. 7 minutes for the whole spices and chilies, and 7 minutes for the coconut. Don't be afraid of the long time, the 25 minutes it will take to do all of this. You do not need to do it all at once. You can do the onions one day and the coconut the next, and the spices a third day. Refrigerate the ingredients after roasting, particularly the onions, and then you can have days between each stage. And now we have to wait for it to cool before we grind it. Make sure not to cover the warm ingredients while they are cooling. That will introduce moisture in them again with the water vapor. And we definitely don't want that after taking all this time to remove all the moisture. The mix has cooled completely. I've also thrown in a few pieces of tamarind. These are optional. You can either add them when you're preparing the Xacuti or you can add them to your mix. Now we're going to grind this into a coarse powder. It will take a few batches. But if you don't have the time, you can just refrigerate the whole thing and grind it when you have a little more time. It doesn't have to be done all at once. Maybe you have 15 minutes every day to do one step of this. So here's the first batch. You can see it's somewhere between a powder and a paste. Paste not because of the moisture in it, but because of the oil in the coconut and the oil we use for roasting. That is okay if it's like that. Mix all the batches together well. You can either use a spatula for this or just clean dry hands. I think they work the best. Here is our Xacuti masala. We have about 5 cups and this is for 3 portions of 1 kg of meat or vegetables, and will serve about 4 to 5 people. Put it in a jar and store in the refrigerator. It will keep there for months. I mean, I keep mine for 2 to 3 months. Most likely it gets over because I use it up, but whenever I haven't, it stays for a while. So my Xacuti mix is all done, and in fact, it's already in my refrigerator. I have used it to bake chicken Xacuti, as I mentioned earlier, and do check out that video. The link is in the description box. Also made earlier is my mixed vegetable Xacuti from scratch, which is without using the spice mix. Do take a look at that video. All these 3 videos together will basically equip you to make Xacuti of any kind whenever you like. I'm going to leave you with another spice mix video, the ghee roast spice mix. With this spice mix, you can make chicken ghee roast, prawn ghee roast, paneer ghee roast, all rather efficiently. So I hope you all will be cooking up a storm of Xacutis at ghee roasts. I'll see you soon. Until then, happy cooking and thank you for watching.